We are happy to announce that this episode of the SWW show is partially brought to you by Humble Bundle. Well, not really. We are part of the Humble Bundle referral program, and we just wanted to say that if you like really cheap games and maybe helping charity pending the Humble thing going on, all you have to do is go to humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. That's right, humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. And you just do your normal stuff, and it just kind of helps us get a couple bucks here and there. Maybe it helps AJ get his lights, maybe it's Mike camera, maybe we actually pay Corey for helping us out. But again, if you're going to go buy games anyway, it might be worth checking out. Hello everyone and welcome back to one of these interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today with me a special guest from, I think, decently around the world. To get us started, do you mind introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
Hi there, Mike. My name is Tomislav Cipcic, and I am the designer of the game Attack at Dawn North Africa. And I'm from Croatia, that's in Europe. And, Attack at Dawn North Africa is a strategy game. It's a combination of real-time and operational level, and I'm trying to make something different, something new, yeah. But we'll talk about it in more detail later on, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so you're one of these fun... So I consider you, and maybe you'll correct me if I think too much wrong, I think of you as this, very specific, wartime strategy games. So obviously, like you said, you're Attack on North Africa. There was always the Panzer Dragoon series. I think it's this, very, intensive games. One of the things that always stands out to me about these games is they're notorious for being, super hard to get into because of very complicated systems. I'm kind of curious, as you were designing and testing the game, kind of how you've accounted for onboarding new players and making sure it's both in depth but not too intense for new people to try out.
Well, that was one of my primary goals. You see, I myself don't like when the games are too filled in with layers. No, not layers, but with information. I wanted to make a game which will be deep and layered, but on the other hand will present its UI in such a way that people will have less difficulty in learning how to play it. So I really emphasized that need for very good, very streamlined user interface. And I analyzed the other games out there, especially the very successful series of games, and tried to figure out what makes them successful. Why are they easy to play? How do you click on a unit? How do you select a unit? How do you give commands? And that was one of my major goals when I designed this game. So that you get all those beautiful layers and levels you get in a strategy game, but reduce your smoothen up your learning curve, because there are beautiful war games and strategy games out there, but because they have very complex UIs, people are afraid of playing them. And I wanted to bridge that gap between those hardcore strategy games and easier to play games, especially with streamlining my UI.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I think UI is a good thing to kind of touch on these types of games, because looking at your game and kind of playing the demo, there's UI there and there's other stuff to pay attention to, but it's not super intense. Where comparatively to I think of a lot of very similar games of how much UI there is, or how hard it is just to be how do I even move or attack with all these units? I'm curious how, I assume you went through a lot of iteration to kind of make sure you had this kind of streamlined look on your UI?
Yeah, actually this game has been in development for, when you look at it, for almost 15 years. 15 years because in 2005 or 6, me and my group of friends started a game which was a prequel to this game. And it took us 6 years to get somewhere and to publish a beta version of the game. And then everything fell down because we made a lot of mistakes. And when I started this game, Attack at Dawn, that was like 3-4 years ago, I wanted to correct all those mistakes. And one of the first mistakes I realized we had was the fact that it was too cumbersome to order units to move. We had planning of movements, planning of maneuvers, a lot of types of formations, for instance. You could edit your own formations. You could put milestones, waypoints, stuff like that. And when I started playing it, I realized, well, hell, it's so complex that if anybody wanted to play it and have fun, they would have to learn books and books just to do it. So I had a lot of iterations where I just removed the stuff that was not making the game fun, and trying to find that concentrate of fun while not losing that depth of strategy. Because what makes a strategy or a game a good game is not the complexity of actions, of the amount of actions, but the fun you get from playing a well-designed, well-balanced game. And I just removed the excess, and I was left with the game you have right now. Now, it can always be improved. It can always be upgraded. I'm well aware of that. But the game you have now is really a result of many and many iterations of refinement and just removing the things which were not fun, and redesigning the things to make them more easy. For instance, moving with the right click and ordering either a formation move or a direct move, or you can even draw your own movement path, which many people find very interesting and can use it in various ways. And also a combination of that together with interesting hotkeys that make everything move faster. And then choosing the speed so the game can run very slow, or it can run very fast if there are some parts where you need to speed up. All of that in one interesting package, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, people who make games are always the most humble. It's always like, our game, like, it has everything. I'm so, that's very interesting. We kind of like this over, like, how long, obviously, you've been working on at least some version of this. And what stood out to me is, obviously, because you said you started a version of the game kind of conceptually in 2003, and then over the last, I think it was like 4 or 5 years, you said, kind of the game we see in front of us. Obviously, games have massively changed over that time. And maybe this genre less so, but they've still changed a bit too. Has that kind of led to a change in kind of your thinking of this game kind of over that time? Or has it kind of been like at least somewhat close to that vision you kind of had in the beginning of developing this?
Yeah, I've learned a lot, and the games have changed, and I've learned from that change. The world has changed. The Steam platform on which I'm publishing has changed. There are so many games out there, and if you want to be successful, you really need to be on top of things. You need to understand what do people want, what do people play, how they use their interfaces, and people are much more used to very fine, very, very good or even great interfaces in these days. They were ready to accept much less refined interfaces back in the day, and basically the concept of the game remained the same if you look at it, using a real-time and operational level game, which isn't something you find very often. In real time you have tactical games. You see tanks, you see soldiers firing at each other. We are all used to play these kinds of tactical games in real time. But when you play strategy level games, when you see those big maps, large territories, you usually play them in turn-based. With the exception of, for instance, Hearts of Iron, which is practically real time on the grand strategy level. Most of the other games on that level are turn-based. And I wanted to take this in middle layer of operational level, which is usually turn-based, and make it real time. And that concept has remained the same. But when I played the games, and I always try to play games and see what's out there, and I always analyze these games and try to find out what's good about them, what makes them tick, why do people love them, and try to put the things I've learned into my game. And this game 15 years ago was based primarily on the Sid Meier's Gettysburg, which was a fantastic game and still is, and the Close Combat series, because I loved that simplicity of gameplay and the amount of historical content you get. And I wanted to shift that to the operational level world. But then later on, when I played the Total War series, or for instance Ultimate General series and games like that, then I realized that I need to adapt more to today's way of thinking, today's way of moving and doing things. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, totally, you perfectly did. It kind of led me to thinking about, kind of as you're talking, is, so obviously as we're talking about, this is a game set regionally in North Africa, and I think one of the thing about war games, generally speaking, or games that touch about war in a more realistic sense, kind of is that level of like realism, accuracy, and trying to feel like, is this a battle that could happen? Or is this a battle that could happen in the way it is happening? I'm curious, kind of, since you've obviously been developing at least these systems for a long time, kind of how have you kind of thought about that? And what was the level of realistic that you wanted to go for kind of throughout this process versus like, oh, it's a video game, we're kind of okay with these tanks which would never interact, kind of fighting in ways they wouldn't?
Yeah, well, that's something else what I wanted to keep, and that is that realism, because I always loved those classical tabletop war games in which there is a very great emphasis on the, well, not actually accuracy but authenticity of the gameplay, because for us who come from the tabletop wargaming world, we do a lot of research on the historical data, on the orders of battle, of the unit histories, of how the things happened. And when we make a game, model, a game system, we always test it to see if the actual historical events could happen in our game. And if you have a system which can, in one of the results, simulate that original historical event, then you are probably close to the actual historical model. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of not only knowledge, but it's an art. You need to make an educated guess on the combat values, combat factors, movement factors, which elements you want to put in the game, which elements you want to leave out of the game. And it takes a lot of work. And I really wanted to keep that realism, or should I say authenticity, of old school war games, and on the other hand, make it in such a way that it's easy to learn, easy to play, and, as they say, hard to master. Basically, if you look at my role models from the tabletop wargaming world, the games like infamous Campaign for North Africa, which is a monster game by Richard H. Berg, huge game, and it's basically a successor, Deutsche Afrika Core 2, DAC 2 by Dean Essig. Those two games, when you play them, that's what I wanted to emulate, but on a computer, in real time, with all of these UI streamlined features, because those are wonderful games. But if you want to play them, you need to spend time to learn them. Campaign for North Africa is such a huge undertaking that I don't know if anybody ever played it in total, because it takes like 10 people to play it. But DAC 2 by Dean Essig is a streamlined version of that huge game, which can be played and is played, is a fantastic system, but you still need to learn the rule book, which has like 50, 60 pages. You need to learn the system, you need to commit yourself to it, and you can't play it with everybody. It really needs commitment from you. And I wanted to present those kinds of games to the gaming population, but with, easy to learn systems while keeping the complexity. And I intend to upgrade this series with more layers. Currently you have that operational / tactical level from the battalion level and regimental and divisional level downwards. And that will enable you to play these scenarios and historical campaigns. But in the future additions to this series, I will expand it with more strategic layers, which are also present in the campaign for North Africa and DAC 2, and those will be staff operations, logistical operations, supply operations, engineering operations, but on a strategic level. And that will, I think, together with this game we have right now, really bring this up a notch and make it a well-rounded game, I think.
That sounds amazing. So I'm curious, kind of, as you said, you at least have plans over time to add to this game or future games in the series. How is it that you're viewing adding new features to the game, while at the same time making sure you don't lose this level of accessibility that you seem to have fought hard to get to? Are these going to be like isolated type mechanics, or is it going to be kind of like more optional, but it would add to people who want to add to it within the experience?
Yeah, you'll have options. For instance, what you have now is a set of scenarios. Some are historical, some are non-historical, what-if scenarios, and you will still have those. Then you also get, with the full game, a campaign, so-called historical campaign, in which, like in a classical way of solving this, you have a set of predefined scenarios, historical and non-historical, and based on your success or failure, you go one tree branch, or you choose the another path, or maybe you get to Cairo in 1941, or maybe you don't. And that's what you will get with the full game, and that's what you will keep. But in the next addition to this series, we will add another mode of play. Let's call it Grand Campaign mode. And you will still have those individual scenarios and a historical campaign, but you could also choose that new Grand Campaign. And Grand Campaign will give you that layer, operational staff layer, with all these new features. So if you remember Total War series, for instance, in Total War series, you have those two modes of play. On one hand, you have a map. For instance, Total War Shogun 2, which is a fantastic game. You have a map of Japan. And there you have armies, you have provinces, and you deal with that strategic level stuff, okay? And then when your armies meet each other on the battlefront, then you zoom into the tactical level, and then you duke it out on the battlefield, so to speak. And based on your victory or defeat, you go back to the grand strategic level, and then you continue your campaign. And that's what this game will add in the future editions of the series. That grand strategic level on which you will really be able to do many, many things. And then when you decide to move into certain enemy regions, or enemy decides to move into your zone of control, then you zoom into the operational level, which is the game you have now, and then you duke it out based on your level of preparedness, order of battle, supply levels, command stuff, and stuff like that. And people who want to just play historical battles will play them. People who want to play historical campaigns will play them. And people who want the complete, total experience of the war and campaign will play this new campaign mode and this new staff level of gameplay. And after that, when we really brush it out, when we really sand up those rough edges, when we upgrade it, when we add options, when people really are satisfied with the outlook of the game, then we add additional content. We move on to Tunisia, which is interesting theater of war, where you get Americans, where you get French in more detail. And then after that, we'll move on probably to the D-Day and Normandy and Germany and Italy. And then when the system really gets big, then we move on to the Eastern Front. And from then on, who knows? Who knows what will happen? Maybe modern battles, I don't know.
That it's interesting the amount of planning. Obviously, you at least have thought through this and all those battles. What I'm curious about is, so when we talk about battles and these games, my head always goes to, like, obviously this genre really started in physical games and board games, and we're talking about, like, obtuse giant games. Like, as you mentioned, like, there's some out there that are just stupid, like, from all of that. I am curious, kind of, as we get kind of to discussion, is when people are looking at this, and if they imagine they either grew up or grew around those kind of board games, are there any other board games specifically that we look at that you think this game kind of matches that feel of or tries to get near?
Most definitely. As I said, that's DAC2. DAC2, OCS system, so-called, by Multiman Publishing, and all of the games actually in that OCS system. Then you have BCS system from the same publisher, that's Battalion Command series. For instance, game Brazen Chariots, which is based on the book by Major Crisp, showing the Operation Crusader, which was a fantastically complex operation in that campaign. And then you have, of course, as I said, the campaign for North Africa, which is probably something unplayable at the state of its current state, but it's a great game to look at, to research, to read through the rule book, and to do all those details. And maybe some smaller games, if the people want to get into it. I would recommend No Retreat series. No Retreat series by Carl Paradis, and published by Victory Games, and then later on by GMT Games. And there is a game in the series called No Retreat North Africa, I think. No Retreat North Africa, which really, in a very good and concise way, showcases this campaign. You get a beautiful set of 5 small maps, and you have really low counter density. You have like 10, 15 counters per side, which is amazingly small amount. You get some interesting cards. You have interesting system of play, and you can play one battle in hour and a half, and you can even play a couple of these battles in one sitting and make for a very fun wargaming night. It's not so complex to learn, and I would really recommend it. So, if you ask me about the board games, that's No Retreat North Africa by Carl Paradis, that's DAC2 by Multiman Publishing, and that's Brazen Chariots also by Multiman Publishing. Yeah.
Wow, that is, yeah. I'm familiar with a couple, like GMT, so I think is what I'm most familiar with. But yeah, no, there are definitely some of these things are very intense, and it's interesting, I think, to see kind of over time how stuff has gotten, like, there's still complicated systems, but they've gotten simpler to the point of, like, now when we see games, especially board games, we don't expect them to take 5 hours to set up, where back then it could be like, oh, it's weeks to just set up the game, let alone play the game, which is still so wild to me that looking back, like, that was just considered normal and acceptable and all these things that now we'd be like, you're insane, and no publisher would touch with a 20-foot pole.
Yeah. Well, you need to understand one thing. One of the appeals of board games is that tactile experience of touching and putting those cardboard counters on the board. That's when I started designing video games, because I started in parallel First, I designed a couple of video games for fun, then a couple of board games, then I published a board game. And then by comparing those two types of games to platforms, I realized that a lot of the fun in tabletop gaming and board gaming is reading the rule book, understanding the rule book, and devouring a rule book and placing those components on the table. A lot of the fun lies in that, because you can't just take the systems you find in board games and just move them into the video game world and expect them to be successful. It's very difficult because you lose that learning curve. You lose that fun of reading, because most of the tabletop wargamers really love that they need to learn and that they need to read those rule books. And when you take that away from them, all that's left is the mechanics, and many of them just lose the appeal if you just translate the game into the digital world. So you can't do that. It's not that simple. You need to rearrange things. You need to add additional content. You need to, create a complete new set of mechanics. That's one of the reasons I didn't want this game to be turn-based, because if it was turn-based, it would have looked like a lot of these tabletop games, and that wouldn't be as much fun. And on the other hand, what do designers do to balance that? They try to put more stuff, more content into a digital game. So what you get is a copy of the tabletop war game, but with much more content. So, for instance, if you play one scenario in Operational Combat series, you maybe take half an hour, 45 minutes to set up the board and place all the counters, and then you play it for 5 hours, 4 hours, I don't know how long. And in a digital world, you place counters with a click of a button by loading a scenario. And if you play against an AI, that same scenario can be finished in like 45 minutes. And people would say, what did I pay for? And then you add additional content, you make bigger scenarios, you make bigger campaigns. But for me, that is not the solution. Just putting additional content in the game isn't making the game more interesting and more fun. So by placing into a real-time world and really shuffling those mechanics in a different way, I wanted to really give some new quality to that. And I don't know if I succeeded. It's still an experiment, and it's not something you see every day. So I'm listening to what the players say, what the community says, and trying to make this better and improve on the concept as they see it, if it's good or if it isn't.
Yeah, no, I think that is a perfect transition to close out this conversation, which again, we're talking about Attack at Dawn, North Africa, which I'm going to ask, I don't remember, is there a release date for the game? I know it's on your Steam page, says spring of 2022.
No, we are still not sure about the release date. I'm still talking with my PR agent, trying to find that ideal time slot when to release. But any time from now to June is the best bet. But very soon. It's coming very, very soon. It's a matter of weeks now, I think.
Perfect.
Not months.
A matter of weeks or months. Sometime in the front half of this year, it sounds like. Attack at Dawn. The Attack at Dawn, North Africa. There is a demo currently available at Steam, and remember everyone to go wishlist this game. It helps him get through all of the fun algorithms and front end stuff and all the fun Steam nonsense there always is. Before I let you go, is there anything else you think people should know? What do you think you want them to know about the game?
About the game, well, I advise anybody who is interested in the game to try that free demo. We did the demo because we thought that was a great idea. We featured it on Steam Next Fest, and it was a huge success. And it really gives you the ability to see what the game is all about, and for free, which is always great. And please go try the demo, and if you have any suggestions, just pop us a message on forums or wherever. We have a mail address, we have Steam forums available, and if you like the game, wishlist it and finally buy it when it gets released. That's it.
Perfect. Well, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your evening to talk to me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Cheers, you too, and thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.
The SWW Show and all of its affiliate podcasts are podcast by me, Mike Maroney, and AJ Losi, sometimes by contributors, including Corey King. You can follow the SWW Show on social media at the SWW Show, or sooner or later you go to patreon.com/SWW to help us out. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.